So on Tikkun Anuk B'Bria. So the question is, there's some questions about this, and I'm not sure about the answer, how I could understand it. He said, "Ve'inyan hu shebedechida ve'ana misakte the malchus ba'olam abriya b'mekoma." So malchus goes down. That's Rachel rose down into Bria at midnight. Hisham he nikvas mitalso shaloshlomo. So that's, and at that point when she's in Olam Abriya, the catchphrase to know that's the fact to hear at this time is that you have this phrase he nikras mitaso shal shlomo kanizka la'el, which was mentioned, he says, previously. Now, let's see, I get into the habit of starting reading across the top. Okay, so I guess we'll read that and the TIV at the same time, so let me go down to where that was. So where are you here? Kaf Daled. So he says, like print, he says, Atikun the Rishon hu desaken is kumas amalchus. Now he says the column kumas amalchus, the column of malchus behi yosech behechel kodesh kadosh and debria, when she's in the hechel kodesh kadosh and debria. Shalusham yordach ba'ata b'layla, because that's where she goes. We know that into the nighttime. But behi yosech sham. He nikras mitaso shaloshlomo kanizka. She's then called by this name. Mitaso excuse me, shaloshlomo. Now it isn't darshan the word shlomo here, which is shlomo. You could say if she's in Bria, she's called a mita. So I'm not sure what shlomo would mean there. It would mean maybe possibly zeranpin in some way. Let's go on. So the reason for this is ki bihi yosekan and nenu rak bechinas dalit. So did we see this the last time? She's at this point, she's only the concept of a dalit. Now dalit, the way that I've heard it darshaned all the time is that dalit is a lashon dalas, that she's poor, she has nothing within herself, like the moon. So but that's not what he's going to say. And then a rag bechinas dalit. A commotion is boiritz leinu ki kol gova kumasoku min a chaza dezer anpin and lamata. What's from the chaza dezer anpin and lamata? Shehem shir dalit sfira shabo shehem tiferes. He's going to say 2/3 of tiferes. Tiferes. Let me get back to where I was. Shir shehem tiferes. That's a hod yesod. The lechein nikras dalits. Dalit. She's called a Dalit because her existence comes from the backside of Zer Anpin, from the Chaz Lamata. Inyan the Tikkun the Tzarek the Asos Ata Rabenok, who the Hine Noida the Gover of Akumus Anuk, that is Rachel, who Mekaneged Achaza is opposite. That's where she starts. Opposite the Chaza Keneged Achaza, the Zer Anpin Olamata. That's where she is. Shuku Kishir Arbechas Spheres the Zer Anpin, which are the 2/3 Shnei Shlishim Atachtonim Shel Tiferes V'Anai. Umachbas Kain, so there's her place there. Matzina Shenikras a Malchus Dalit. So why is she called a Dalit? Shehi Omed is Keneged Arbes Spheres the Zeranpin. Let's read a little bit more here, and we'll come back and look at the Shefa on starting with number Yud Tes. So he says number Hine Chaserim Emenu Shir Sheish Spheros. She's missing 6 Spheros. So in other words, she's corresponding to Zer Anpin. She has to grow to the size of Zer Anpin. Kadeshidi Hilkumasa Shava Hilkumasa. So her height will be the same as his. So she's only corresponds to 4 of his Spheros. She needs the other 6. B'kedei lahagdel is the nuk sheyeshiva of a shiur kumasa of the shiur komas Zer Anpin. Zark lahagdila lahashliva ba'od shir kuma shal shisha spheros, so she has to get the original, an additional 6 spheros. Those are the top spheros, or rishonos, which are the koch of chagat. Usually it's the koch of chagat, or chagat. Okay, the Zer Anpin. So he says, let's read on a little bit more. So this tikkun comes about as a result of these 2 pasukim that we were talking about, which start like this: Hinemi Tasa Shaloshlomo, and then it says Kula v'chu zecherev. Shehu bebechinas olam abriya, ashecha b'sham, choisel bebechinas daled. She was a letter daled, she was a number 4, bilvad, she was only a 4. So he explains, and he says, Tikun zera na'asa al yedei v'mira pesuki hine mitasa shel Shlomo. So he says, Hu hatikun na'asa denuk ba'oda ba'olam abriya. So this is what he wants to assign us. So your kavanah would be, when you're going to say these phrases, that particular set of 60, like explained before, is 3 times 20, because there are 20 words there. Ba'oda ba'olam abriya, it refers to her when she's still in olam abriya, the mitasa shel Shlomo, kuba b'chinas heichul kodesh kadashim, the olam abriya keniska. So that specifically is another word for the heichul kodesh kadashim, the bria. So now that you got these 60 words out, which is the 6, which is what she needs. Each one of them has another 10. Each has 10 spheros within it. And the shlemis, the s of spheros, so that she becomes completed, the 10 spheros, v'hi shlema gomohu, and she is complete, just like Zeranpeh. Kashir call the s of spheros, like the amount of all of her 10 spheros, the dechura, of 10 spheros, the dechura, hers are also come to the same height, called sphere, the dechura, shecha b'sham bebriya. Yasim ha-teva shebe'elach pesukim. So place these words in these. There are 3 20-word, 3 times a 20-word sentence. Shkein pesukim elu yesh esrim tevos. Each one of them has 20 words. You multiply by 3. Hare shishim tevos. That's the 60. And each one of the 60, you have to correspond that. That's your kavanah. Is to have the idea that you're building up the nook in Olam Abriya. Hem keneged shisha spheres kochov chagat agulutim kol echad me'eser. So that's what they are. Each one of them has 10 spheres in it. V'koach amiris eilach besukim nishlam shir kumas hanuk. It completes the amount of the height of the nook now. Kashir kumas is their anpin, and she is now the same height as their anpin de bria. Ayin shefa kavanos. He wants to let us hear. Go look at the shefa, because there's something over there. So he says, V'lechein, let's just go on here a little bit. Ein ana maskirim rak sheish achaserim mimena. We only really mention the 6 that she's missing. Asher olim lecheshbon shishim, and that you put them like that you can multiply that by 10. Multiply by that 10, and you got 60. So he shir kumas hanuk. Who eses spheros is actually comes out to be 10 spheros. Become makom misaknim rak shishim bechinos shel shisha spheros. But also we're only doing what 60 bechinos, 60 different aspects shel shisha spheros of 60 of 6 spheros. The fi shemikare he kavar gedolos, because let's understand that she's already a certain height. Kishir kumas arba spheros kenisker. So therefore, what we want to talk about here, maskirem rak as shir hakuma hachazalo. So we're only talking about that part of her stature that she's missing. V'im arba spheros shehoyolach ba'adhena yushlam shir kumalso the spheros. That's what we want to go to. So now we have. We're going to go over to number Yud Tes. Okay, number Yud Tes in the Shefa Kavanos, which went on this phrase, Ha'inyan hu. What did he say? Ha'inyan hu, just reading now, just up above to get it back again. He says, Ha'inyan hu shebedechilach anim esaktin the malchus ba'olam abriya b'makomo. So she's in, we may have to make a tikkun in malchus while she's in bria. Be'inyan amavur kan, so the Shefa says, what we're talking about over here, the chida misaktim as the nuk bebriya v'la'achar become misaktim l'sobet silos. That's where we're going over. That's where this is heading. Yesh bezecha b'shnei drachim. There's 2 different ways. Shnei drachim b'meforshim. There's 2 different ways. Now, this is the second time that we've seen that there's a machlokas here between the Shem and Sason and the Sodeh. So let's see what he says here. He says, "Bir shemisaktim as rachel the atzilus sheyarda the bria b'layla, And then we make a tikkun in her when she goes up to the Tzilus. He says, don't forget though, actually, she's not really going up into Tzilus at this particular moment, but apparently this is a prep for that. Or maybe it instills that. There's a lot of ideas about the Rishimos and so on and so forth that we have over here. It's a little bit hard to say what it is, to get a really good definition of it. So he said, "V'af the aliyas and the asa rak la'achar mekan ba'alas shachar mekan makam mekuvanim ata al shema asi." But anyway, now this is the idea, is that we're gonna misaken her in Bria, and then we're going to bring her up into Atzilus, which is going to be at Alas Shachar. So let's go on. Amnam, that we see this Sodeh, and he says this is brought in Shari Rachamim. He said Bebir Ba'ofen Acher. He said the Hine Lenuk Yeshnam Arba Shroshim. She has 4 Shroshim. Now I'm not sure where we learned this from. We did learn some from Rabbi Mimran about the Shemona Esrei, as the nook grows from a dot up to the place of this place. Maybe that's what he means, but I'm not sure. So he said one of the 4 shroshim, so this is going to be stated out. Well, actually, if we get to Rosh Hashanah, Mitzvah Hashem, maybe we'll see that in the 6th drush. So he said, "V'chava kan shemisaktem as Rachel b'Bria." So here we're making a tikkun in Rachel of Bria. Eina kavana the Rachel del Tzida sheyarda the Bria, can't be that. Ela kavana shemisaktim as shorish hanuk sheba'olam habria. Okay, so the root of the nook is originally in Bria. Now he had mentioned, or maybe he's going to say it, maybe I don't have to say it. So what is the nook doing in Bria as a root? Where is her root? How to get there? So he said, so, and then we'll go on to that. Shemisaktim as shorish hanuk sheba'olam habria. Misaktim as shorish hanuk shebe'atzilus v'lohalon nivoyer as divra rav defi shnei drachim elu. Now this would be 2 different ways of looking at this. So let's see. So he says, what do we have here? V'yun od b'toras chacham. He says, he has another understanding. Be'inyan tikkun zecha b'shachal denuk de bria de tzilus. Certainly, it's yashe bezecha be'eze partsufim meduba. We have to talk over here about what partsufim we're talking about. Again, so look at the Torah's Chacham and the Shem and Sasan, other things over there. Let's go on. So I haven't gotten to the real problem that I was thinking about. Number Kaf. He says now, Kibihi Yosakan and Nano Rak Bebechinas Dalit. That's what they said before. That's what the Rav said. The motion is Barvitz Lenduki call Gova Kumazuhu Minahaza de Zachal Hamata. The Das Hashem and Sasa, now according to the Hashem and Sasa, Ashachagavana the Hanuka Yerdis the Bria, that we're talking about the nook that goes down into Bria. Leish the Ayin, the Halo, Kusher Yerdis the Bria, he Rak Besod Nakuda Achas. This is really just her Kesser. The other 9 spheros remain up above. The Halish She'eres Rak Im Sphera Achas. Veich Omer Kan the He Bebechin Dalit. So how you're going to say that this nook, which went down into Bria, only one aspect of her went down into Bria. So how do we say that there's 4 aspects? Veich Omer Kan the He Bebechin Dalit. The Haino Arba Spheros. While Derek Zecha Yiksha Melech Yiksha. Hemshech devarav shekosher tzarich lahashlim lo shisha spheres acherim la. So how do you count her up so that she's a 4 when we know that she's only a 1? So the dechoira chaseirach abelad teisha spheres, not 6 spheres. She's missing 9. Bir Hashem and Sasa. Now this is a little spacious for me. He says, Abir Hashem and Sason on Os Yodal, he said, the La'olam Achein Beridosach of the Bria, he rocked besod Nakuda Achas of a Chaserim La'tesh Spheros. That's correct. El Shakora Lo Dalit, but we call her a Dalit anyway. And why do we call her a Dalit? Al Shem Bekinosa Ba'oda Betzilus. Because she was originally the Dalit. So, okay, that's what he says. She was originally the Dalit, but now only one part of her, as compared to Zeranpin, saying that she got a lot of Shefa from Zeranpin, and which part is Zeranpin? And he said the Tani from the Zeranpin, those four, that was her. And so that's her essence in some way, and therefore, when she goes down, she's still called by that name. Dalas al Shem Bekinasa Ba'oda Batzilus, well, that's what she was when she was in a Silus. He says Sha'az, because then, Omedet mechachaza the mata connected the adalat spheres to their anpen. So that's her position. So it sounds like it's almost a nickname, something like that. She's not four spheros anymore. But then on the other hand, when she was just the four spheros on the back of their anpen, she was an entity, and so therefore she picked up the name in relationship to her husband. So what is she's written here? That it's important for her to complete the other six spheros, since she's really missing 9. It's really talking about that. What we're trying to do here, not that. So the thing is confusing about this is that we just went through these we had these pasukim that add up to the number 60. So here he says actually she's missing 9. So wait a minute. So Umasha Kosa Shatzark Lahashlim Lo Shisha Spheros. Hagavana Hi Achein Lahashlim Tesha Spheros. What's that to complete her in with 9 spheros? Rafa Kaven Shehatesha Spheros Achaseros Law, but rather only that what she's missing, Haim Ata Etzel Leah, the thing is that what she's missing was absorbed in Leah. The Rachel She'ida Leah, so all of those things are part of Leah. So he says she's Barbadrusha Kodim. So we understand that Hashilas of the Hashila of the Kalim. The Chain Korah Lechem Vav Spheros, so therefore we call them by the name of Vav Spheros. Why? Al Shem parts of Leah on Nikra Vav, Al Shem Shemakoma connected Vav Spheros to Zer Anpen, which are what? Kochav Chaga. Now, I don't recall seeing her called a Vav, but I do know she corresponds to those spheros, the Kochav Chagat. So he says this is all a code word to say that when she's missing the Vav, she's missing what is held by Leah, which are the Lent. Is it Lent? That's the right word. Or by Leah was borrowed. Those 9 spheros. Well, since Leah, that's what he calls it's like a nickname. So she's called the Vav because she's in relationship to Rachel, calling the Dalit. She's called the Vav. That's the whole shita there. So the das is son, and that's the das of the Shem and Sasa. But according to the thinking of the das of the Sadeh, which we know we've seen already, it's really talking here not about the nook that went down into Bria, but actually that our kavanah should be that when we're saying these 60s, he says that the kavanah should be for the nook shababria. So also Shafer, he said the fei masha omer rav shehiba bechin the dalit. So then it makes sense that she's a dalit. She came shorsha bebria omer kenega the tani the zer anpin. Now that particular phrase I'm having a little trouble with is he says because where does zer anpin get into this? Shekain shorsha b'shababria, her root when she was in bria, and this a part that had to look at a little bit more carefully. Shekain shorsha b'bria omed keneged the tani de zer anpin. So the question is that fine? How did zer anpin get down there? Behind the keneged the rishimo shehisha zer anpin the tzilus. So this is actually when zer anpin actually was of a tzilus. went down, Akashayora the Bria Be'ez Atzilusa went down into Sia, and he says, Ayin Sharachmem. Okay, but this had to do with the nursing from the Dadi Behema. If you remember, that's part of the deal back over there in Shaar. It talks about this. He says that that's where he starts out, and we know that the Nook, maybe he's saying, some of the rest of the idea, the Milk is a Pesia Labar. So she's actually going down there with him. So he says, so therefore, that relationship between he and her, at that time, the Pesia Labar apparently corresponds to his Tani, which is where he was in Itzilos, and she's riding along with him when he goes down into Bria, and therefore that's an idea. The Bria is Be'ez Atzilusa, of Atzilusa, when he was actually coming out. Okay, so I got started with this, and I wanted to see if I could finish it. I don't know if I got enough material here, but we'll try. So now we're going on to the next piece, the number Kaf Aleph. I'm not sure that I followed this particular thing. You probably understand what he's saying, but he said, "Ve'inyan zecha tikun na'asa al yedei shnei pesukim elu shehem hinei mitasher shel Shlomo etc." Kosev Siddur Kol Yaakov, who wrote the Kol Yaakov, is Rebbe the Re Kappel. He said the Inyan zecha v'nirmaz gam b'tevis hinei ha'ol shishim. So that's also in that pasuk. Excuse me, let me get a drink here. Now let's look at number Kaf Bet. So Kaf Bet, I don't know if he's got the exact quote, but or something slightly different. So the quote goes on, Vayidei Eila Shishim Tevos. So we got to the 60 words. Nar Shalom. So there's a copy what the Nar Shalom says on Amud 831. He says, Achar Kachi Omer Yirat Zom Fanecho, Hashem Elokeinu Be'elokei Abateinu, Shebekoch Segulas Kriya Shnei Pesukim Elu She'ekro Shlosha Pamim. So these two Pesukim, which I'm going to say 3 times. Ha'olan the Shishim tables that come up to the gematria, or what, to the number, there's actually 60 words then. Im klalos hakavanot sha'akavim b'hem. I'm not sure what that means, with the general kavana that I'm placing in this direction. Yisukna v'yushlam b'chinas hachisaron sheish sfiros elyonis denok kadisha dezer anpin. So by doing this, what is his words? You're completing the 6 spheros that the Nook is missing. Ha'omedes anta bebria keneged nehim d'dechura. Now we have once again, I'm just thinking that he's talking about the Dadi Behema idea, and that the Nook is riding along. When they say Pesia Labar, he's now saying that the Sia of the bar really refers, where's the bar? The bar is on the backside of Zer Anpin and the Tani of Zer Anpin. I'm writing that in. I'm trying to understand this. But Bria Keneged in the hymn to the Chura. So she's in Bria. We had all those kashas over there. She was complete. The bed is Zer Anpin. She became the proper bed of Zer Anpin. That's going to be her position. Bas Es's sphere is called Echa Galula Ma'eser, and so therefore she draws it. Now he's talking about, the best understanding I got from the Shem and Sason and the Sada was he's talking about her Rishimo. And the Rishimo is the same thing as her, just an impression of her. It's like a stamp in her, in Bria. She makes to get to the entire height of the male. And then you take these 2 pesukim, and you say them 3 times. Ma'al kol teva. So the idea is like this: every single word that you say there, nirsham keneged ezes sphirahi. So it makes an impression corresponding to that particular sphera. Again, we're probably talking about the rishimo of the sphera. So the seder goes like this, from the bottom to the top. First we do the Malchus de Tiferes, then we do the Yisod de Tiferes, and then we do the Kesed de Tiferes. Then we do the Achar Mekan Malchus de Gevura, Yisod de Gevura, Ad Kesed de Gevura, V'chein Hala, and you go through each one of the 6 that she's missing, and each one of the word will correspond to that. Ad Keser Shebekeser V'hainu Spheres Kochov Chagat Nehem Apratios, that is, you're going to go through those 9 Kochov Chagat Nehem Apratios, the Spheres Kochov Chagat, the Klalos. So that's another way of saying that. B'shir kol ha'eses Spheres de Dechur Rachashach B'sham B'Bria. So that was our question. So maybe this is what I was looking for. The Hikshi B'Shem and Sasan has this question: Ma shaychus yesh the Rachel d'Atzilus imazad the Bria? What does a Rachel who fell into Tzilus, from Tzilus into Bria, have to do with the Zad that's already there? Shetzark lahagdila kashir kumalsa, and you have to make her his whole the same height as him. Now he's saying that this is by making her in Bria the same height as he. Since this is preliminary to her coming back into Atzilus, so we have the setup of a yichud here that's taking place in Olam Abriya. She's set for yichud before she comes into Atzilus. I'm not sure what the meaning of that is, but that's a sequence. The Bria shetzarek lahagdila kashir komaso. Halot tzarek lahashlim shir komaso shetishva. L'zer anpin d'Atzilus. It should be the same as zer anpin of Atzilus, v'tzarech iyun. Says v'hasodeh, bir de'ena kavana l'zer anpin d'Bria. He explains that the kavana is not of the zer that some zer anpin of the Bria. Elash l'shor shehishir hazer anpin d'Atzilus b'Bria. But once again, it's coming about to the root that he left by as a part of a Rishima, who Rishima Shehisha Zer Anpin, La'achar Atzilusa, after he came into being. I think that's the best way to say Atzilusa. Shiar Lianech Bebchinas Dadi Behema, so he goes down to nurse from the Dadi Behema, which I think of as an Atik or an Eric Anpin. I'm not sure which is which anymore. Bebchinas Dadi Behema, so it's actually, that's where that idea of the Dadi Behema came from. So okay, so there that was that idea. So now you see that the Dadi Behema, as a result of that, Zer Anpin with the Nook, which is that I said that Pasiya the Bar in my mind, they wind up going down. Whatever he gets, she gets. So he needed to nurse from the Dadi Behema there. So therefore, she's in that position as well. Okay, so let's see. I think that we really exhausted that, but we have a couple of more minutes. So let's read on to Tikkun and Nukba Tzilus. Now, that was the whole idea there, and try to understand what that was all about. So let's read here. This would be number Lamed. Number Lamed says, "V'achar shetiknanu." So now she has a tikkun in Olam Abriya, and he's saying, we want to be saying that this is a tikkun in her root, which is the rishima that was left over, of a nishlam al-eses severos kanizger, and now she's going to be 10 severos, oz anu ma'alem osel elad silo. So you did that by saying those 60 words. Now you're going to bring her into Atzilus. So now that she's grown in Olam Abriya, the Nishlama, and she became completely Geshir, Kumas is their Anpin. So now, in their root, I would guess, we're trying to say here, they are now combined at the same height. Ola Rachel b'chazara le'olam Atzilus, she comes back. So he said, "V'lechein anatz richen tikun acher v'hu l'shlimer v'lesakim gam v'lesachna gam l'mala bebechinis olam atzilus." So therefore, we need another tikkun. So the first tikkun was in some way while she was in Bria. So you have to figure that out. So how that came out. So now, though, she's going to need to come back into Atzilus, and so how are you going to do the shalushla b'bal sheisha chaserim mamanu? V'tihi hakumazu shava el kumazu asher ba'olam ha'tzilus, so that now her height is going to be the same. Ata tzrichen l'sachna tikkun sheni b'hiyoseh b'tzilus. Lahashlim alone shuv as shir kumas kumas ashishas spheres hachaserim law to be equal to zer anpin b'gadesh teshvel the shir kumas as a spheres the zer anpin the tzilus. How are we doing time wise? One more. Lamed bet. So ukeneged the tikkun zeh anu oimrim sheyasim as shishim asfon. Excuse me. After that, in order to get her, the tikkun for her is to find another place where you could do a 60. And how do we do that? Tikkun zeh naasa ayedecha b'mirish shishim osiyah shebeshloshachas pesukim berchas kohanim. Vayidei kain nishlan kumasa kumas azer anpen, and this actually completes her to that height. The gam b'chatzilus yesh dara b'shir kumas dalit spheres, because we see, I know these are reflections of each other, really, like in Ovi, but she was 4 spheros down there. Let's say the Rishimo, and now here in Tzilus can be the same thing. But tzarich l'chamshik lo od sheish spheros, and I think we'll stop right here. Wishing you a wonderful Shabbos, Shaiva Briut, and Simcha.